Is it recording? Yes, it is. Okay. So today is the first in the series. It's time to talk about death, or let's talk about death, because I don't feel that enough people are talking about death. I feel that it is important to bring light to areas of darkness in our lives, or what is considered darkness, but light and dark is the same thing. And most people think of death and think of the dark, or they think of something negative, or they're scared of it or fearful of it. And through this series, I hope to help alleviate any of that fear by actually showing all of us that death is in everything. Death is in the way that our skin cells slough off every day. Death is of a red blood cell every 120 days. Death of a job, death of a relationship, death of a marriage. There's death of old belief systems and ego, and so many topics. So through this, I will go one by one and cover all of them as I can, and bring on different guests and professionals in all backgrounds, religions, races, whatever ethic code that they want to talk about, because we have to also talk about death and the ethical parts and the non-ethical parts about death, and then obviously death of a loved one as well, or a pet. There's so many different components, and we're always constantly experiencing, even on a smaller or larger scale, on a day-to-day basis, we have a death going on all the time. Death of a day, death of a week, death of a month. So through this, I hope to shine some more light, because I feel very called to do so. And given the climate of our current global situation, I feel it's finally time to really talk about death, because there's been a lot of it. And I definitely felt the need to wait before starting to be more open about talking about this topic, to allow people some time to process all the changes that are occurring in their day-to-day lives, whether that means their children now are homeschooled, or they possibly lost their job, or they had to move. Obviously, COVID and having anxiety and fear around that, and obviously that shining light on people's mortality, which can also incite fear if they have not done any work around their own belief systems about death. So I am a nurse and a nurse practitioner, and I'm also a death doula. And death doulas are, we are a group of humans that show up for families and the person that is transitioning before the time that they, before the end of life care, even, so that you can start to prep and plan and facilitate conversations, and honor the dying person's wishes, and make sure that those are supported every step of the way, and that the family is supported. And then allowing there to be some more closure discussed before that person leaves this planet. And then also doing the grief work and the grief processing and integration with the family members that are left here. So that's part of what death doulas do. And I have been very supported and proud and grateful of the community of women and men that share in that space and show up for others in that capacity. I will go deeper into what death doulas do later in the series, but they're always available, and maybe something to think about if you or somebody that you know needs support around end of life care, even before the last few weeks. Should start prepping and talking and having these moments with your loved ones, and help that facilitation of the soul leaving the body and just going to the other side. So that is why I feel also very called to share and speak around death, because I've experienced it with patients and with family members, as well as clients, and working with also plant medicine, and experiencing ego death, which is a part of us. And I have ego that blocks me from processing pain that is within myself, because pain and trauma and emotion and grief can be stored within our bodies, and it's stuck energy. And if you don't process it, get it out, get it up, then it can lead to being triggered, outbursts, anger, and illness, and cause, a person to actually physically get sick, because it's a manifestation of unprocessed and unhealed emotion. So that being said, I'm going to share a little bit of myself. As I was preparing to do this presentation, I had a lot coming up for me, and knowing that I also am raising the bar for myself, as well as the plant medicine and psychedelic community around safety and education and integration and ethics. And I decided to go on my own inward journey, and I've been working with my own plans, but also with DMT, and it is definitely the delayering of self and ego, and things start to come up well through this process. And there's no coincidence that as I was doing the prep work to do a presentation around death, and like I was going to do slides and do this whole thing, and honestly, the last 48 hours, I've literally just been reprocessing all this stored grief that I've had in my body since I was little. And I'm really raw, and I'm going to share, and I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm okay. I'm just very open right now. And so at first I thought that it was around my grandmother's death, who she died in October 18th, 1995. I was almost 14, and I didn't have an opportunity to process or to talk about it with anyone. I didn't want to talk about it with my parents because I didn't want to make them sad, and I don't think that they wanted to talk about it with me because for the same reason. And I didn't have the tools to process, and they didn't have the tools to process. So there is one opportunity for this unresolved pain of loss and grief that was within myself. And I was a very disruptive, disobedient child, especially after that. I had no respect for any authority figures. I was getting in physical fights at school. I was skipping school. I was experimenting a little bit with drugs, ironically with acid, which is, like, I don't even know. So funny how full circle. Now I do work with psychedelics with intention, but then it was more of a experimental and like not really, and trying to numb out. And so as I started to process this part of me that has been stuck in there, and as I was working through it, I was also being very triggered and angry and frustrated, and I was going through the whole system of DABDA. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross coined DABDA as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I've basically been flowing through that. I mean, I think just as we all do all the time when we're processing grief, you can do it all in the same day. It can take a month. You can revisit. Grief work is something that doesn't go away. You continually work on it, and then once you do all the deep work, then you can come to a place of acceptance. And yeah, you're still going to get emotional or sad when you're missing your loved one, or the person that maybe you didn't get to say goodbye to, or that pet that you've had that has died. But as you process the unhealed parts, the acceptance part, and then being able to be in a place to bring light to that, and have positive memories all the time and live in that happy space. So as I'm processing this, and last night I laid on my bathroom floor for like an hour crying about my grandmother. And then I realized it was every single person that has ever died that I have not grieved or mourned. And I thought I was doing the work. And I thought I had processed. But for me, I was like, as a nurse or someone that, like, if you lose a patient, you take a pause and you're affected and you take it home with you, and you might have a day or two, but you have to like jump right back in and show up and be there for these families and the patients. And you can't be upset, really. So I think like on this later stage of my life, that's how it was showing up. And the earlier stage of my life, it was just like I wanted to just not make anybody else sad or feel hurt. So I didn't want to show emotion. And I'm a very emotional, sensitive, empathic person. So all of that pushed inside. I had like 2 grandmothers pass back to back. I've had some classmates die along the way. I've had sorority sisters die. I've had, I mean, we've all had a lot of loss, right? But I didn't realize until last night that I had not like sobbed or let it out for so many people. And maybe for a minute, we all had this college friend, DM, who passed, and maybe now 6 years ago. And I had like a moment of sadness and cried about it, but like there's still moments that I think of her and I'm just like, oh, what a beautiful soul. And she left, but like never really giving myself the time to do the work around that for each person and creating whatever that means for me. And now recognizing that and moving forward, this is all coming up and out because I'm supposed to show up for so many people. So of course, doing the grief work, all flooding in within the last 48 hours is exactly the way it's supposed to be, so that I can heal those parts of me, so that I can help be a like support system and hold space and guide for those that are going through. So sorry, I just got a little emotional. I might still get emotional, but who knows? But speaking about the unhealed pieces of us. So when I have something that's unhealed in me, I might get triggered by something in you. And if you get triggered by me, that is a sign that there might be an unhealed piece of you. And what does that mean? Because when I do the healing work, you do the healing work. And when you do the healing work, I do the healing work, and we all heal that piece of each other. So by healing our relationship around death and the sadness about it and feeling like it's so scary and awful, we can bring light to something that is considered dark, which there is no such thing. It's all one, just like love and hate are the same exact thing. I used to say love and hate, like love or hate is love in a different package, but really they're the same thing. There is, not one without the other. And, not to beat ourselves up around the darkness within us that we think is dark. It's our shadow side. We all have each light and dark, and it's one. And so as we embrace that part of us, as we do our healing work, whether it is with grief work or death of ego or death of old belief systems, death of religion, death of sexual orientation, then we embrace this dark side or shadow side and bring light to something that's beautiful. And it should be adorned and made perfectly perfect in a divine way, just like we consider all the happy, loving, light-filled stuff that we do, because really it's the same thing. And for my next episode of the series, I'm going to talk about the cultural relationship around death, and I'll be in Oaxaca at that time for Day of the Dead, and doing some like still shots, but also showing the beauty of what happens when a culture embraces the death and honoring of the people that have left, or not really left, we're all energy, it never dies, and they celebrate them and have a party around them, and there's pictures everywhere and people get dressed up. And I am so excited to be experiencing that for me, but also so that I can share that, so that I can also shed light on how beautiful and brilliant death is. Just as I was not so beautiful, crying on the floor in tears and coughing and coughing and coughing, because unresolved grief shows up as respiratory, like a cough. And so I just wanted to say that, because also I'll have patients with like unresolved cough, and they'll have like, oh, it's postnasal drip, oh, it's this, and then they like want consults all over the place, but most of the time it's unresolved grief. My family members have it. I I was literally just choking on myself as I was crying and getting that out. And no, it wasn't pretty, but like now I'm here to sit and talk to you about it and also be able to like hold that space for somebody that feels like they can't deal with it because it's so ugly and gnarly. So I just wanted to share. And I know I'm like going a little bit off the tangent, but I wasn't really able to put together this organized, perfect little presentation because I was getting my shit handled so that I could show up for you and me and all of us. So, you know, I wanted to share a quote by Harrison Owen, and he says that whatever happens is the only thing that could have ever happened. And the universe brought us to this point and will continue to work its magic. To hold space is to rest in the chaos that is in the darkness, a darkness that represents a vast field or unknown potential. And that comes from Tao of Holding Space. And I thought it was just really beautifully written. And I wanted to share on that because as it are both birth or death, it's all the same. It's very important for us to hold space for those that we are working with. And we have rules for this holding space. And those rules are no judgments, allow the dying to trust their own inner wisdom and intuition, create a safe container for complex fears, emotions, trauma, allow it to be okay and feel safe to fail, and then allow for anyone and everyone's own choices, even if I don't agree with them. And as I was reading this, I was realizing that this is also rules for me and holding space for my process as I'm doing the work with my own grief and unresolved like mourning that I never got to do. So I just wanted to share that because like we need to hold space for ourselves and honor our own processes. And if that means that we're on the floor crying and coughing up a storm, or if that means that we are taking a beat from our emotions or sadness just to go enjoy, you know, a happy moment outside and enjoy friends or have a cocktail or whatever it is that makes you happy, whether it's to dance or whatever, to not feel like you can't do that and not feel like you're not, you know, you're avoiding your feelings or emotion, because that's not true. We have so many parts of us and it can't always be perfect, and we're not supposed to be perfect. And to honor and hold space for each other and yourself is so valuable in just being present in this human experience. So I just wanted to share that. And I came up with at the beginning of March, when I decided to jump full on into becoming a death doula and building my own business and practice. And I came up with the acronym DOOR: Death, Observation, Acceptance, and Rebirth. And that is something that we can all look at through any process of our lives, whether it's a job loss, the loss of a pet, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a marriage, the loss of sexual orientation, the loss of racism. You know, there's death, actual physical death or emotional death, spiritual death. Observation is to step back and to observe and to watch what is going on, being slightly removed, still feeling, but being out, a little outside of that sphere and taking a pause, and then embrace and accept what it is that you are experiencing, and then be reborn into whatever new phase of your life that you're going into, because it's always birth, death, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth, repeat, and everything that we do. So door is also a door, like that we're always going in or out of, and it's always in a circuitous fashion. So I came up with that. And when I was driving to North Carolina, I was driving a lot of places before I ended up coming here to Mexico. And there was a truck in front of me and it said grief. And I just like all of a sudden came up with ground, reflect, emote, integrate, and free. It was like spelled with the E before the I, but I don't mind. So ground, reflect, emote, integrate, and then free yourself. And as I was preparing for this, I wanted to like revisit that and realize that I haven't been grounding myself enough and taking space for me, and then having a ritual for just me to ground myself, my feelings and emotions of whatever it is that I'm going through or processing, whether it's death of loved ones or death of my old belief systems or who I used to know to be, who is not here anymore, or she's sort of here, but I'm like completely like transforming into this interesting new creation of me. Um, and grounding myself and understanding that and having that practice built in. So, in whatever way that that means for you, to have some sort of grounding practice so that when you're feeling emotional or not, maybe not processing emotion, to allow yourself the space to do the work. And in turn, that will help to be less triggered, whether your trigger is an emotional like outburst or anger, because all this unresolved, unhealed emotion can show up, um, as these traumas. And having an outburst, for me, I have these angry outbursts when I get so frustrated and I don't know what to do. And now through this, I realize it was all of this stored emotion that I wasn't allowing to be processed. And I was stepping into the work of a death doula. So I've gone this far without understanding that. And thank God, with my own relationship and with the help of my healer, I've been working with DMT to start unprocessing and opening up pieces of me. And you can do this without psychedelics or plant medicine, but to really, like, for me to sit and prepare and have an intention around it and do the work and then integrate what is coming up is very pivotal in what I'm doing and my messages that I am here to share, and the channel for both the plant medicine and psychedelic community and for the topic of death. So you can get to certain places with meditation, but working with the plants and psychedelics is a little bit of a faster pace, and it's not for everyone, but I do encourage, if you are considering doing any work with plant medicine or psychedelics, to do your homework, do some research, make sure you know what you're getting into, and the person that is with you knows how to be with you and help you and integrate whatever it is that comes up in the process, and that it's always in a safe place, right set, right setting, right dose. And I'm just bringing this in because with doing the work with psychedelics, you are constantly having ego death over and over and over again. And it's not comfortable, but it's super helpful, and brings more light and love and energy to you as a vibrational being. So it's not always pretty and it's not comfortable. There are brilliant professionals to hold that space for you in the process. And it's not a one and done. It's not, I'm going to sit with this plant this one time and have this like mind-blowing experience and never come back to it. It's a relationship between you and the plant or psychedelic and your relationship with yourself. And it's a continual process. It's not just one and done. It's, you keep going back because you still are unlayering. And sometimes you have a day to integrate what comes up, and then obviously you're going to integrate after that. Or sometimes you take months between your journeys, but you still are doing the work in between of what had come up and had been unearthed, which will also continue to show itself. And so that integration process is very similar to the processing and reprocessing of grief. And as I was writing this and coming up with that, I was realizing, like, in the psychedelic community, we call it integration. In the death doula community, or for grief counselors, it's considered processing and reprocessing, and then allowing that to be integrated in your day-to-day life, because that is why we're here, is to do the work and to grow and transform and transcend and to share what we have just gone through and the gifts that we just went through, so that we can share those for people that are or maybe experiencing the same thing. And currently, with the state of what is going on in our world, it's really important for us all to take a pause, see where we are maybe are avoiding or not showing up for ourselves, and how that is affecting ourselves, our life, those around us, the energy that we put out, and then be able to show up to the person that's standing in front of you and be in a space so that you can hold that space for that person and whatever they're going through, whether it's the job loss, whether it's a loss of their partner or a marriage, or loss of a loved one, because there's been, a lot of death with, COVID and everything that's going on, and a lot of trauma around that, both for the family members and also the healthcare workers that have been working in these spaces and in these hospitals, and then, doing the work to help support them and integrate back into this three-dimensional world when you are in it and in the thick of it with someone that is in a traumatizing experience or in a physical death. It is, you transcend with them at a point when you're really in it and connecting to the soul on a soul to soul level. You need to come back and integrate back into this world. Same thing with psychedelics. You can go up in the ethers all you want, but you got to bring it back down and like deal with this human experience in this three-dimensional world that we're living in. And we are all collectively elevating our consciousness little by little by little. And as we all raise our vibrational frequency, things will just fall away or die and get better. Like, we won't have to be fighting about religion or love or hate or whatever. Like, it's all the same thing. We are all one. I'm you, you are me, we are we, and us together can change this world. So by changing our outlook and doing our own work around our own set beliefs and maybe unresolved feelings with death and our relationship to death, we're also healing so many other parts of ourselves and each other. So as I dive deeper over the next however many I make of these, my hope was to work with my partner and healer in this, but through my work and all the things that were being triggered and coming out, I don't know if that's going to happen, and I might be doing this on a solo mission, and I'm here to do that no matter what, but and deal with what has transpired within myself the last 48 hours and still be gentle, kind, and loving, so that I can also show you guys that we can all get through everything, and we have each other and we have ourselves. And to take the time for myself and take the time for yourself to do your own work and separate from others while you do it for a little bit, because it's really difficult to process so much and not spew it onto another human being energetically, maybe not even verbally, but just energetically. And then that other person can absorb all that emotion and energy. And some people are equipped to be able to absorb it and then process it and get it off of them, or like off of their being. Most people aren't, and it's not fair to do that regardless if they are or are not. And it's really important to be aware of that. So taking the space away when you're processing, and also cleansing your space and yourself after going through any emotional journey is really important. And like I said, getting that emotion up and out and healing is so beneficial in so many ways. It's going to lighten you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because blocked energy can lead to illness and manifest in physical issues in your body. And most of the, there's a lot of spiritual components to why physical things happen to us. And I just want to, touch on that, because I know through my own experience with others not wanting to do the work around the pain of the loss of a loved one or a relationship or whatever they have valued as important that is no longer a part of them. I know that it's really easy to think that the work is done and to forget about it because it's too painful to relive it. But I can promise you, the deeper that you go is the deeper that you will be within yourself and be able to show up in such a beautiful way for everyone, because we are each other. I really appreciate the support that I have received, and the messages from so many people. They thank you for doing this work. I thank you for showing up. And I thank you for showing up, and I thank you for doing the work, because we're all in this together. And I, as a part of what I've been journeying through, realizing that in these plant medicine circles and psychedelic communities that these healers aren't healed. And I realized that I don't call myself a healer. I don't want to. And now through this, I realized I wasn't calling myself a healer, not only because it's you're going to heal yourself. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm just going to help guide you and give you the tools. But also it was that I had unhealed pieces of me still remaining. And I know I still do. And until I feel that I am in a space where I am healed to show up on a great level, I can only meet somebody from at the point of where I have done the healing work, right? And then at that point, if I can't match frequency, I hand off to somebody that can. And there aren't many people that can, because most people avoid doing their own healing work. Like I said, I thought, I knew I had stuff in there, but I didn't realize the depth of my unhealed pieces of me, especially around death and grieving and mourning. And of course, this all came up beautifully and divinely orchestrated at the same time I was doing this, and as well as, doing a lot of education around safety and plant medicine and psychedelic circles. But yeah, the healers are not healed, and then they go and hold space for people that are opening up, unleashing all this emotion, and then it's not a very responsible or safe environment. So I just encourage everyone to do their own work and do their own healing. And then if you have this beautiful, amazing experience with the plant medicine, and I value everyone's experience and I think it's beautiful, make sure that you're doing all the work before you're going and saying that you're going to serve plant medicine in a circle or community, because it's very irresponsible and dangerous. And we don't want more trauma and more PTSD and more grief coming out of a circle like that. Like I said, my next video will be then when I go down to Oaxaca. It'll be my birthday. It was October 29th, and Day of the Dead is like November 1st and 2nd. So I'll be doing a whole video and presentation around cultural beliefs of death, and then integrating Day of the Dead while I'm there. And I really look forward to continuing on this journey and sharing in so many ways around this topic, because I know it is so important and needed, and it's time to talk about death. If anything that I said resonates with any of you, or you feel like you are ready to go deeper within your work, I have a few spots available to work one-on-one. Please feel free to reach out to me. My website or my email is jennifer@iresonatehealth.com, or you can find me on any of my social media avenues. I love you. I love you. I love me. I love us. I love we. I am here. You are here. We are doing this together. And I am so grateful and thankful to be on this journey and for you to be sharing it with me. Thank you so much. And I will be sharing this recording. And I love you all very, very much. Be well.
Thank you. Love you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
I love you guys.
You're welcome. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for supporting me. Let's save.